the day. And she said, well, nobody's perfect, you know. So.
Did you happen to catch the Letterman show?
Oh, yeah.
And what's your feeling on that based on everything you know? And then this is going to be an extended portion of the show. These guys are going to stay with us for a while so we can fill in some of the details. But jumping ahead to the present day, Courtney Love, what is your guys' reaction?
She hasn't changed. She's still doing a striptease, but this time in front of David Letterman. She used to do it in seedy strip bars. But, you know, the fact is, Alan, again, we, on behalf of the three of us, and I think, you know, there's no doubt Max and Tom agree with me, tomorrow we have this big press conference in New York, and everybody's going to be there. CBS, MTV, Blender, High Times, Jane Magazine, Time Out New York, Getty. But the reason why we're on the phone tonight is because Allan Handelman is the man who really legitimately followed this case from day one. Now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. That's great, but we want to give it to you first, Alan.
Appreciate that a lot,
you and
guys.
your listeners deserve it.
I agree completely.
I appreciate that, guys. Okay, let's take our break here because we're going to go back in history. We're going to give some of the background on this case if this is all new to you, and then talk about some of the new stuff. The book Love and Death, The Murder of Kurt Cobain. Is that book now out?
It's out in every bookstore across North America.
Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about and what they'll be talking about tomorrow at the press conference and tomorrow on the Today Show. You're going to hear tonight. We're going to take a break. Don't touch that dial.
This is the Allan Handelman Show, compelling talk radio.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the Allan Handelman Show, heard on a great FM rock and roll radio station across the country and streaming from our website, ifitrocks.com. Ian Halpern, Max Wallace, the author of a hot new book just out, Love and Death, The Murder of Kurt Cobain, and Tom Grant, the chief investigator. Tomorrow, a major press conference. We'll be talking about a lot of the things you're going to hear tonight first. Here's another snippet. By the way, Metallica, during the third hour tonight, Metallica, not live, actually already recorded it, but it's a good one. Kirk Hammett, lead guitarist. And before we go back to the topic at hand here, here's a little snippet from Dateline Friday. In this segment, they talk about the state of mind of Courtney Love.
But lately, another change. Since late last year, Courtney Love seems to be hurtling full throttle towards self-destruction. Arrested in October 2003 for allegedly trying to break into her ex-boyfriend's house, she was charged with being under the influence of a controlled substance. Hours later, she reportedly overdosed on the prescription painkiller OxyContin and was charged with possession. Love denies the charges against her. Within a week, she'd lost custody of her daughter, Frances, now 11. Love is embroiled in a custody battle over Frances with Cobain's mother.
Courtney's fighting inner demons at the moment, and she's doing it in public, and it's frightening. She's careening around like an out-of-control car.
Then last month, a raunchy rampage. In one wild night, she seemed to unravel. First, an impromptu peep show on David Letterman. Later that evening, performing at a concert, Love allegedly threw a microphone stand into the audience. One man's head was gashed open. Another arrest, another charge. At a concert the following night, Love allegedly dove into the crowd, sending a photographer to the hospital, claiming a bruised neck.
Now, I saw her on the View of all places. Did you? Any of you guys?
I saw that. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
She was like dismissing these charges of hurting people at the club as if they were lying, and just unbelievable. Max, let's start with you, and then Ian, take it anywhere you want to go. Let's talk about new people who have come forward.
Perfect.
Well, definitely the most important new person that's come forward. When we first set out to investigate this many years ago, I guess 8 or 9 years ago now, we contacted members of Kurt's immediate family, or tried to, and none of them wanted to talk about his death. And then we heard a rumor that his grandfather might be ready to talk. His grandparents were probably closer to him than even his own parents. They were extremely close. Kurt had called his grandfather shortly before he died and made plans to go on a fishing trip with him. His grandparents said that he was very upbeat, very happy, looking forward to this fishing trip. And so we paid a visit to his grandfather, Leland Cobain, last summer. We got there and we started talking about Kurt as a child and Kurt's state of mind around the time of the death. And there's this cliche that the suicide gene ran in Kurt's family because some members of the family committed suicide, and so it was inevitable what happened to him. We're talking about this, and we asked him, how did you feel when you heard that your own grandson had killed himself? And he said very matter-of-factly, Kurt didn't kill himself. He was murdered, I'm sure of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he proceeded to tell us that right from the very beginning he was suspicious, and he was convinced because of the gun. He's a hunter. He knows a lot about shotguns. And when he heard the description of the shotgun, he knew there was something wasn't right. He said that the scenario that they painted was impossible.
He also said he believes Courtney Love's involved, Allan.
So did Courtney's father, Hank Harrison.
But
That's
Courtney's
right.
father has no real credibility, never met Kurt, he's very suspect.
That's right, because he has a shadow, kind of a past himself.
And, it's hard to take anything he says seriously, but when we heard this from his own grandfather, that really shook us up.
Yeah, it was powerful. Allan, you got to look also at the rest of the evidence, the forensic evidence. Drawing on the leaked medical examiner's autopsy report, he revealed that Kurt Cobain had 3 times a lethal dose of heroin. He could have not possibly injected himself, rolled down his sleeve, put away the heroin kit, picked up the shotgun, positioned it backwards, and shot himself in the mouth. And that's what the as the police claim, the police goofed on it, Al. They labeled it an open and shut case of suicide. Now, according to forensic pathologists and opiate experts, Cobain would have been unconscious within seconds of injecting the dose of heroin, no matter what his tolerance level was. Unfortunately, the person who investigated this case, Dr. Nicholas Hartshorn, the medical examiner, he failed to reveal his conflict of interest, that he was a good friend of Courtney Love. When Max and I first interviewed Hartshorn, and we got the first interview with him, we went to his office. We saw he had Nirvana posters in his office. He told us he's a former Sex Pistols fanatic and that he was very good friends with Kurt Cobain. Now, this is the guy, Allan, who labeled it an open and shut case of suicide.
He wasn't friends with Kurt Cobain. He was friends with...
I think they resented the fact that you guys, and Tom Grant in particular, kept the case going, and they just became stubborn and said, no, we're not going to reopen it. He was a druggie, he overdosed, and he killed himself.
And that's what it was. We're not alleging that there was a cover-up, or some of the wackier conspiracy theorists have their theories about how the police and the medical examiner are covering up the true facts because they don't want to make the city of Seattle look bad. That's ridiculous. This was just a rush to judgment.
Allan, from our first interview, I've never said that either.
That's right, I know.
Yeah.
But explain what the police are saying, basically. He had this huge dose of drugs, and under the influence of the drugs, he would take a shotgun and somehow figure out how to turn it around, even though he was in this supposed stupor, and shoot himself. Now, did the angle of the shot, Tom, indicate that he could have possibly done this?
I don't believe he could have done it because of the heroin overdose and the diazepam that was in his system, regardless of the angle. What I've always claimed is that there's nothing in the medical examiner's report or coroner's report, whatever you want to label it, there's nothing in any of those reports that could not have easily have been duplicated by a murderer. And if that's the case, then it shouldn't have been labeled as suicide. It should have been labeled as undetermined, considering all the other evidence that points to murder rather than suicide. Mm-hmm. All the inconsistencies.
Allan, there were no legible fingerprints on the shotgun. Dead men don't wipe the prints off their own gun.
Yeah, what did the police say about that?
They said that maybe during the recoil he might have wiped the prints off himself, and it's certainly possible. The fingerprints don't alone prove that. None of these things alone prove that he was murdered, but together they certainly add up to enough evidence to reopen the case, to change the verdict from suicide to undetermined. We had a Colorado coroner that's been reviewing the forensics for more than a year. She's really interested in this case. And she's been scouring county, state, and U.S. records to find a single case in American history where somebody with the same levels as Cobain could have survived long enough to do this, And she hasn't been able to find one single case. She's an expert in